Yo, this is Necro Butcher.
Nightbound that is, that's made of political
relation. What I see is other.
When you go camping, you're gonna see the Milky Way galaxy.
Punk rock type attitude too. We're just gonna try to, gross you out with our music.
If you love it enough, whatever you're doing, whether it's your instrumentation, music, or everything like that, you'll find a way to make it work.
We could do this all night. Bass players, I use.
Yo, this is John from Noise Dosage Media, bringing you some of the most impressive and innovative extreme metal musicians on air to have an in-depth conversation about things you haven't known until now. We like to mention our sponsors and friends, Bishop Martin of Rat Punch and Begrudgingly Benny. Brandon specializes in stippling and digitally designing one-of-a-kind gruesome creatures that will look fantastic on any type of band artwork, tattoo, just about anything your twisted mind can think of. All of the art on this podcast is created by him, and we can guarantee 100% professionalism for a fair price. If you want to support the pod, please be sure to sign up for one of our $1, $3, or $5 Patreon tiers. We offer exclusive content, updates, merch, and unique offers that you can't get anywhere else. We're hoping in the future this fund can help aid in various subscriptions needed to keep this platform alive while delivering the best quality content we can. Our mission is to support more bands and deliver more content to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Patreon.com/Noise Dosage Media. So the last show I went to was Overkill, Exhorder in Florida. I was on a road trip and I was like, no shit, there's like a really good show in town. And I made it out and it was so fun. Like, it was like, I got to see like the Florida scene and how tight it was and see a good set all in one night.
But was that the one in Tampa or the one at the
House of Blues, Orlando?
Yeah, that was a fun show. That was a good show.
My question off of that was like, how downhill did that pandemic go after that show? Because I know right after that show, the day I woke up, everything kind of exploded. And I don't know. Did you play any shows after that? I don't.
One.
You played one?
We were supposed to play three more. We went directly from Orlando to was it Charlotte? I think it was Charlotte. And we were supposed to do Baltimore the next night and then wrap up in Montpelier, New Jersey, and that's where Overkill's from. And so, when you're a bigger band, you get to decide that the tour ends at home.
Right.
For us, it was crazy because we got to Charlotte, had a great show, but we all started hearing things throughout the day. I remember my mother was really sick, but not with COVID. She had some other health issues that were kicking her ass, and I was really afraid because my mother's 82 years old, and there she was having health issues during a pandemic. I'm like, that's usually the people who have the biggest problems with it because they're so compromised. But later on in the day, we started hearing through the grapevine that the last two shows might not happen. And I want to say probably right before sundown, we got the word from the Overkill team that both of the last shows were canceled. So we started making plans we just went back to Cincinnati where Jason lives, and unloaded the bus, unloaded the trailer, and everybody got a good night of sleep. And then we had to buy early flights, so that was expensive. You lose a little money on those last two shows, but to be honest with you, the tour was so successful that we ended up doing okay. And thankfully, I was grateful that it happened 2 shows left instead of 2 shows in. That would have been really difficult. I had plenty of friends that were supposed to go out on tour shortly after that never even got to leave, and I felt really badly for them because at least we had a chance to play. I think it's safe to say we played the biggest metal tour of 2020 because
That was a hell of a tour, man. It's so good.
Yeah, it was great, you know. But I mean, there wasn't a lot of competition before that or after because everything shut down. You know, it's unfortunate, but we were blessed to do what we did.
Yeah, it was just such a weird time period, and it's just ironic I'm talking to you now because it seems like everything's like opening up and shows are starting to come back. And geez, that was like a year ago, and like time just goes by so freaking fast.
Yeah, and we've been preparing for, you know, we've had some shows rescheduled that we are playing. We had some rescheduled that got pushed back again, and we've got a full headlining tour in Europe in the fall that I'm hoping happens, but you know, the jury's still out on that, so we just have to wait and see. But we're going to do Psycho Las Vegas August 20th. We're playing the Friday night show. So
did I see you guys on Maryland Death Fest?
We are on Maryland Death Fest. It got pushed back this year, and then it got pushed back again, and they asked us if we'd like
the 2022, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we're on it. Yeah.
Sick. All right, so I'm gonna shoot you the ideas I have brewing up. So being a front man, what do you think is the biggest thing overlooked to be like a vocalist?
Well,
minus the talent. That's what I'm talking about.
I think the biggest thing that people don't really realize before they get into it is how physically taxing it is on your body and on your psyche, because if you've got the flu and you're a guitar player or a bass player or a keyboardist or whatever, you can get through a gig. But if you're a drummer or a singer, your body's your instrument, especially for a singer. You know, the drummer's job is more physical. There is an instrument to play, but you've got to, you know,
it's physical work. Yeah. I play guitar, man, so it's not much.
But yeah, like, you know, people, young people especially, they get out on tour and they, you know, you dream of going on tour. So you get out there and you start partying, having a great time. Well, if you don't get enough rest as a singer, that's it. You're going to get sick. Your body's going to be weak. Your voice will be compromised fairly quickly. So for me, I learned a long time ago, I dealt with 5 weeks of strep throat on a tour one time. So for me, it's like, I'll do anything in my power not to get sick on tour. And sometimes it just happens, but I don't, it's not to say I won't have beers on occasion on the road, you know, and have a good time, but I always make sure that I get plenty enough rest. And that's the biggest mistake I think that a lot of singers make, especially early on in their career, is just running themselves into the ground, feeling like you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof and don't need the rest, but you do, you really do. It's so important.
Right. That's a good point. You know, partying with Overkill, I'm guessing that there's Jack Daniels and beer available all the time.
You know, when you're on tour, you know, each band has their rider and everybody's got their own separate stuff. But when you've been doing it as long as Overkill has, not only do you have probably a little bit more than the support act, but you know, they got friends coming by that they hadn't seen in forever that bring beer and this and that. And, you know, fans that bring gifts. I'm not kidding you. Just about every night, Bobby Blitz came and knocked on our bus after the show, the bottle of something. Like, this is
well, I remember watching a YouTube video and he just pulled out a bottle of Jack Daniels. He's like, "Let's party, man." I'm like,
we had so much fun, and our bus is always a good time. We always make sure that we have fun music playing and that, you know, everybody's welcome, as long as, you know, you're not causing any trouble, of course. But people tend to gravitate to our bus. I guess we're kind of, especially in the old days, especially because we were so wild. But even still today, I mean, this band was born and bred out of New Orleans. It's in our blood to have a good time. So people tend to.
It's
come
hard to
our
not
bus.
bring any friends after. I mean,
Right.
touring around, I feel like touring around the world, it's impossible not to make friends.
Yeah, there are a lot of artists that are kind of reclusive too. So like for me, I enjoy touring, and it's not for everybody. There's a lot more misery and discomfort than there is glory. So, but when it's going well and it's fun and the party's happening, it's a great place to be, no doubt. So you make the best of it when it is good, and when you're stuck in an airport at 4:30 in the morning waiting on a 7 o'clock, you haven't slept or bathed, and it's awful. It's tough, man. It really is hard work.
Everybody sees the freaking Motley Crue story, and it's just not the thing. Like, it just
even the bigger bands, man. Like, if you've got I've already been where we played a show in Portugal and have a show in Italy the next day. So you finish the show in Portugal, you go straight to the airport, you get on a plane. Sometimes you got to take a ferry ride in the middle of the night, and you got to make sure you're awake for that, because you can't stay in the vehicle under the, in the cargo hold.
I've seen some crazy stories, like, on how, like, the transport happens from, like, example, like Italy you're talking about. Like, I saw Metallica driving in, like, a Jeep out in the middle of nowhere one day. And I'm like, I don't know, man. That don't seem cool. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, sometimes that's the only way to get there, man.
Yeah, especially, like, seclusive places like that.
Yep.
But, all right, so another one is, what you feel are 3 characteristics of, like, a musical project that will last more than, like, 5 years? Like, so many bands are bursting out right now, and I'm thinking, like, what's the point of doing something just for, like, a year? Like, I don't know. If I'm doing something, I'm going all out on it. It's going to be a project that'll last.
Three characteristics / requirements to succeed with some longevity on a project.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. First and foremost, commitment. Because if you don't have everybody committed to the same goal, at some point somebody's going to drop off. Camaraderie is very important. It's not critical.
Right.
I'd rather play in a band with someone I didn't care for that much, if we could figure out a way to get along and work professionally together. I used to have jobs. When I had jobs, I'd rather work with the person who I didn't get along with but was a good worker than a friend who would lay on my leg.
Totally.
So yeah, commitment, camaraderie helps. The happier everyone is, of course, the happier your bus will be, or your band, or whatever you're touring in. And aside from that, I think, I guess with commitment comes the hard work and dedication. So we'll lump everything into there, like, staying focused on the job, the task at hand. So doing the hard work falls under commitment, camaraderie, and I think you've got to have a lot of luck and breaks.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to have talent. So, like you said, let's not even talk about talent. Let's just pretend that you're a talented band who's got a chance here. Well, then you've got to, in addition to the hard work and the camaraderie, you've got to have some breaks. If you don't get four, that's going to help expose you to an audience you've never had a chance. If you don't get an A&R rep with a label to listen to your music and want to take a chance on it, or at least watch it develop, journalists, social media, all this stuff comes into play. So
I feel like I feel like nowadays it's like 60 or 70% marketing. Like, do you agree with that?
There's a lot of bands that are less tenured than us that have a much greater social media presence than we do, and that's really our fault. I mean, a lot of things are our fault. We disappeared for, at least in the recording release part of it, we disappeared for 27 years. We went from 1992 until 2019 without even releasing an album. A handful of things we did in between. So nobody was really working with social media when it started, because why work it if we're not doing anything?
Right.
And in hindsight, I really kind of wish that I had, because I mean, we just got to 10,000 follows on Instagram, which really, for a band of our legacy stature, isn't that much.
Right.
We got like 57,000 on Facebook, but bands that grew up listening to us might have 500,000 or 100,000. So all that means is that they were on it sooner and worked it harder. We've grown tremendously since we started. Since we reformed in 2017 and started recording again and touring. And that right there, just being present. And for us, there's a ton of people that grew up listening to us, never had a chance to see us. There's a ton of people that heard of this band and happened to see us touring with Cataclysm or Overkill. And then there's the legions of people that just never knew we even existed. To them, we're a brand new band. It's crazy.
Right. And my question off of that is like, so some of these old school death metal bands, they don't do social media. Like they just don't do it. Their whole motto is just to like be obscure, just like release a really good album, hope it does well, and when it does, just like don't post anything. And they still get people to come to their shows, and I don't know if that helps or hurts them. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like with social media, everybody is so used to getting everything like right to their fingertips. The randomness is somewhat helpful for them.
In this day and age, I guess you can be on principle or out of stubbornness or out of simply just not being computer savvy, tech savvy in that regard. Especially if you're an older band and you put in your time and you've earned your skins on the wall, you can get away with a little bit of that. If you're a brand new band coming out from jump as a startup band,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, for years I was like really active on social media, and then I started gravitating away from it, especially as the bands I was in were getting bigger. And I was talking with the management that we were with at the time. I was talking to the manager, and I was like, man, how do we get this band bigger quicker? And he's like, you're gonna have to embrace social media. And I was like, I just got myself off of it. And he's like, seriously, and I've spoken with Monty Connor at Nuclear Blast, our A&R rep, about it also, about how do we sell more units? How do we get bigger? These younger bands are killing it. He said, you know why? Because the younger bands, not only are they've got the social media thing down to a science, but they also have found a way to connect with an audience that does a lot more downloading and streaming, which is the future. The way of the what's the word I'm looking for?
The physical.
Yeah, the physical, the actual hard copy of vinyl.
And that just sucks, because that's what bands make the money on. Like that.
I was I was born in 1970, so he's talking about 83, 84, Slayer, Metallica. These bands are just coming out, and I'm discovering them. And there's nothing like going to the record store and getting that brand new vinyl and smelling the packaging and reading the liner notes. To me, that was half the fun, was reading the liner notes while I listened to the album. And I think today's generation, there's just a regurgitation of information every day in abundance that I think it has taken the world to a short attention span kind of mentality.
Oh yeah, 300%. 300%.
Yeah. So like my daughter, she'll listen to songs and skip from song to song, and she won't even let the song finish.
Yeah.
And I may not even be connected to the song she's listening to, but to hear the song jump in the like mid verse or during the musical interlude because she lost interest in the song and wanted to go to another one, it's like, that's terrible DJing 101, for starters.
Right.
You start a song, one of them, but not their generation, man. They have parties on my back deck, kids 18, 19 years old, and that's all they're doing is skipping through songs. And you don't hear anybody go, hey, man. They're all just like, cool.
Skip it. I think I read something like it only takes like the first 3 seconds for somebody to like or hate a song, like to skip it.
That's why
it was like 1 to 10 seconds, somewhere in between there.
That's why I have no interest in ever having a long intro on an album again. Because if someone gives me a demo to listen to and I put it on and there's a 2-minute intro, I'm out.
You're out. Yeah.
And there might have been something great behind it, but like I was just thinking today, like with the advent of TikTok and all this stuff, which I guess Vines were the prelude to this.
Vines, holy hell, you're bringing me back.
This day and age, everything is about video and visual, and I hate watching. My kids, they're all grown now, but they're anywhere from 18 to 30, and the younger ones, they come to me or they text me all day with all these videos, and like I look at it, and if it's more than like a minute and a half, I don't even watch it half the time because
you got better stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm a busy old man.
That's funny. All right, so the next topic is a funny one. Like the biggest hurdle in the music industry, unless minus the physical going away stuff. The biggest hurdle in the music industry right now, and how would you fix it?
The biggest hurdle, well, apart from COVID, because that's clearly the biggest hurdle right now. That just goes without saying. So let's just say we're back to where we were before COVID, to make it more real and interesting here. I would say the fact that people, unless you're like one of the bigger acts, you just can't live off of record sales like people used to in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and even into the early 90s. Like when you see that a band did well on the charts, you got, well, this band is, cracked number 65 on the current albums chart, which is different from the Billboard 200. Billboard 200 is literally everything. You might still have Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd on the top 200.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
But for the current albums, they made that chart for bands that are just releasing stuff so that they can measure that chart success. So let's just say you crack 65 out of every new release. Well, that means you probably sold less than 5,000 units in the first week, So
right.
It used to mean something, like for fucking, I'm sorry, can I curse on here?
Oh, you're good. You can say whatever the hell you want.
The love of God. in the mid '90s when Pantera Far Beyond Driven came out, it debuted at #1. The album shipped platinum. It like the initial orders for that album were 1 million units. So, that's just in the United States. So they get a platinum record from Billboard, debut at #1, and that's the initial shipment. That's crazy. It's insane. Like when I was in trouble, we did pretty well on those current charts, and I think week 1 we sold just under 1,000 units.
Right.
And I remember somebody going, "That's nothing." It's like, that's nothing. Is your band selling 1,000 units? Because
right in this day and age.
Yeah. So what's ended up happening here? This is my opinion that I've formulated from talking to people over the years as to what things are now. Now, your album is basically like a business card. You make this album, and here's my album. Put it on YouTube, or hopefully you can sell it. Give a few copies away here and there, but it's your calling card for all intents and purposes. Going out and touring, that's your billboard, that's your advertising. Here we are,
right.
Almost like the traveling snake oil salesman, right?
Right.
And the merchandise is where we survive. That's it may have been Gary Holt, from what I was told, that was quoted as saying, "We've all been reduced to traveling T-shirt salesmen." I'm not sure if it was Gary.
Gary. I always say that we're shirt drug dealers, man. I'm not in a band right now, but when I was like, we're just shirt drug dealers, man.
It's insane, and it used to be that you didn't even have to be one of the big bands, and you could still make a nice, comfortable living at it. But here we are. We've got our album charted fairly well throughout the world, and we were on some good tours, but still finding ways to have to rob Peter to pay Paul just to keep it going. Sometimes it's hard work. I've got people that I know in my life that are like, "Well, you're a millionaire, right?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me,
dude?"
You realize I was installing fire alarm systems 2 years ago. This is the life that I've lived, man.
Right. It's funny you say that because, I was just talking to a coworker about this. I was watching this video on YouTube of Kurt Cobain. He had some huge mansion overlooking the Hollywood Bowl. Did you know that?
Oh.
So he used to live there. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, so you're telling me that this guy had this much money back in the day, and that's because of record sales. And I was talking to my coworker. He's like, dude, he was a rich musician. Anybody that sells that amount of albums are rich. I'm like, not today. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like,
well, I mean, if they're selling as much as Nirvana exploded in a way that,
my God.
I think that's part of what did them in was they weren't wired for that out of the gates. They were built on a do-it-yourself mindset from a city that was a do-it-yourself punk-minded kind of city, and then all of a sudden, whoa, it's not a joke anymore. And I think that they probably had a tough time adjusting to it mentally, because it is a big leap, and that had to have some sort of factor in their demise.
Right. All right. So the last thing I got, more in the Southern Skies, last release, amazing. And I just wanted to say, it's great. And my question to you is, what do you think shined the most on this record, and what do you have next as a band?
Okay. Yeah, I tell you, I'm super proud of this album because, most importantly, I think the feature on this album that pleases me more than anything is just the fact that we finally captured the sound of the band on a production level that was more likened to our live show. The
Oh yeah.
the in your face approach, because you've seen Exhorder now. So
Yeah.
and if I tell you with the first two albums, they pale in comparison, obviously production wise, to More in the Southern Skies. And I mean, believe me, More in the Southern Skies is very produced. It's not like a raw album at all, but it's big, upfront, and in your face, which is what this band was always based on. Our live show was always an experience and not just a concert. You know, like most people are fans or people that had never even seen us before. I've had, soccer moms come up to me after our show and go, I didn't even want to like y'all because I've heard my husband listening to you, but he told me you got to come see this band, and I'm glad I did because it was an experience, a spiritual experience. I'm like, thank you, because that's kind of what we've always shot for, is to make it something for everyone, whether you like this band or not.
Right. I think you guys definitely do it. You have like the perfect blend between, like, how do I put it? I don't want to say mainstream because that's a bad word, but you have like the blend where the people from the outside that don't really listen to the underground stuff would still enjoy it if like they listened.
Good songs. We've learned a lot over the last 27 years. First and foremost, you don't have to write 5 albums and cram them into 2, which is kind of what happened with the first 2. There's a lot of parts. Some of the songs are well structured, and some of them, I don't want to say they're not well structured because they're works of art and they're intricate and they're amazing for what they are, but they're not stuff that the average listener is going to gravitate towards. And this time around, we didn't like make an effort to sell out and start making hit songs or anything, but we did make an effort to kind of strip it down some and make songs more pleasant and enjoyable, even, not even just for the listener, but for us. To me, that's the big art of all of this is the commitment to writing the song, serving the song, not letting what I desire to put into the song to take over the song. It needs to sit in its spot correctly. Everything else needs to do the same thing. Everything has a role, and you make the song better that way. So
right.
We're currently working on a follow-up to More in the Southern Skies. In August, we'll be deep into rehearsals, not just for that, but also for the show in Las Vegas, the Psycho Las Vegas, because we haven't played in a year. We haven't even been in the same room together since we left from Emic tour, So we're, we've all been working remotely, demoing at home, sending each other files. You try this, I'll try this. So we've got a body. We've got more songs than we need for another album. But what we have to do is get into the room together, start letting the songs develop as a unit, and then start cherry picking the stuff.
It's totally a different feeling. Like for me, like demoing music and then playing it with the person is totally different because I don't know. It's just not. I'll like write something technical and then it just doesn't breathe. Like I just can't see it playing in front of people. Some stuff doesn't fit.
Right.
But yeah, this was a cool chat. I've had a few bailers this month, and I was like totally bummed out. And I'm like, this is gonna be sick, and it totally was. So I've got a bunch.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, man. This was a good conversation. You had good questions. That helps.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I try to pick random ones that people haven't heard before. So
yeah, and living, I still can't do anything fun or interesting. How are you?
That's funny. All right, so let's start this off. I got a few questions here. Right off the bat, I want to say, Chris Soutsos, back in the day, I was huge into thrash metal. It kind of faded away. Got into death metal, but I'm like slowly turning back. And,
why not both?
Yeah, and and Chris, like he went on tour with you guys and like he's the merch dude, and I'm like, I gotta check these dudes back out because I listened to you guys like a long time ago, when that was my thing. But I'm like, holy fuck, the new album, dude. God damn.
Yeah. Hey, there's no point staying in the game for 15 years if you can't make progress, in my view. So, and also there's kind of, the band fell apart after Empire's collapse and sort of reforged. I think we had sort of a Phoenix moment, with Vanquished and Weapons. So I think those are hands down the best two we've made. I put them about, give or take, equal to each other in my view. And I'm really proud of both of them. I think that there's not a weak track on either one. So I'm really happy about that whole thing. And, so if I die tomorrow, I can say I made at least two. I think the first four are pretty rad records, but the two records I can consider like those are definitely like got to be upper tier thrash metal records,
Now here's the question. Me being a musician myself, if you were to go back to any of those albums, would you fix anything?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. You always have better ideas for something you could have, should have done. At the end, it's some other part of a song. For instance, Living Weapon, at the end, there's a high shriek that's just like, Living Weapon. And it would be sweeter if it was, I am a weapon. Just like, then, it's a slight variant, fits about the same rhythmically. Not that it's going to make or break the song, but just little shit like that I always think of.
I feel like vocalists are like the top tier, because I've been in bands and stuff, and there was one vocalist I worked with where he was never happy. Like, it didn't matter what we did, he was never happy.
Oh, you can't be that guy. You have to, so there's a balance between, I think you can't ever get high on your own supply and be like, we're the fucking greatest. Yeah. Because the question is, even if that were true, how do you beat yourself then? If you rest on your laurels, now you're dead as an artist. You're dead in the water. All you're doing is trying to coast. You have to have some vision you could at least explain to yourself of how you're going to be better or cooler, different, or more interesting somehow than you just were before in your career, and how that's going to be relevant to your band and what you are as a band in the first place. Can't right. If Warbringer randomly made a jazz record, right, even if it were a good one, no one would like it.
Hey man, right? It could be sweet.
Right, but it would be
how about polka.
Sure. I mean, they're great, right? I'm sure, there's I can't think of any major style of music where none of it is good. I don't think that's true of anything, really. So it's more, we don't try specifically to be yes, we have to be thrash metal to a T. It's more just, that's kind of what the band is naturally. If we're playing fast, aggressive metal and my vocals aren't and you can hear what I'm saying, but it's also not melodic. So that's what people call thrash, basically. Right, right. But I think there's a lot of melodic, kind of black melodic death sort of elements we pepper in there.
Yeah, especially on the new album, man. That's the last question I have, but
yeah, we can talk about it now.
Yeah, yeah. The one topic I want to bring up, I was talking to my coworkers. Let me shut the door before I start going into all of them.
Sure.
Give me 2 seconds. All right, we're back. So I'm talking to my coworker today, and he asked me this question. He goes, what is the loudest show that you've ever been to? And I'm curious to ask you that question.
Well, it wasn't Manowar.
It wasn't?
No, they had I remember in Sweden Rock, they were all making the soundtrack a pain in the ass for whatever other bands were playing before them on their stage that day. Some years ago, and trying to make sure they were exactly at the decibel level. Come on. Basically it has a lot more to do sometimes with the building you're in or something. There's been some really loud,
volume
bands
doesn't matter.
Even a band I can remember what they were called because I've seen a jillion fucking bands play for a jillion shows, and in general, they're all pretty fucking loud. Is basically the point. So it's hard to say relative. I've heard a number that make me go oh yeah, even for me, this is loud. But I've heard more than one of those, and I wasn't they were on different days, so I can't compare. You know.
Yeah. Well, my coworker said to me AC/DC, and I'm like, really? Because I was thinking about it. I'm like, those fucking dudes. The singer had ear problems, so he's probably compensating and making everybody else deaf in the process.
Who knows? It could be that day, them in that specific room, or maybe that's the thing they do in general. Sometimes a group like that's got a lot of open space in the playing, compared to I don't know, like I can't tell what band's on your shirt, but it looks like they're brutal. Yeah, it looks like they're brutal based on the logo, and they probably have blast beats and stuff, and therefore they couldn't go. Yeah, exactly. So therefore they couldn't. If you crank the volume for that too much, and you get muddiness in the sound, it could be kind of hard to mix extreme metal, because you need that like clarity, so it doesn't like careen and sound and noise. You can hear like all the articulation and all the fucking 16th notes and blasts and all the rest.
Right.
So yeah, and especially too, like I think death metal in particular, more than black thrash or any of that, has the issue of a lot of it's in that like lower tonality. So if the house speakers at whatever shitty bar you're at can't handle it, which they usually can't, or often can't, then it can sound like.
Yeah, you just crank the cabs at that point, like and then the vocals get drowned.
Right. That can happen. But, I've seen all those kind of situations. Sometimes the worst ones are where like you have to do the PA basically vocal only and stuff. But fortunately, we've always played as enough of like a straight live band. That's always been important to us. Like, no, we always felt like you can't rely on anything fake. I think the whole neo-thrash movement, in a sense, at least the way I saw it, was kind of like, hey, the metal of the 80s was like raw and unique and cool and interesting, and all this different stuff happened. There's all this artistic evolution in a fast period. And then you get kind of like some homogenization where you have these established styles. And by around the time we're starting, I'm getting to metal in the early mid 2000s decade. And, I felt that there's a lot of like typewriter drums, like a certain kind of production you would always hear that had been,
I was
being
literally
done for a while.
just saying that the other day. Like, I don't listen to deathcore anymore, but every drum kit sounds the fucking same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like straight up the same exact bass drum, the same snare, everything.
That's what it's like if you have kind of a consensus on what's the best sound. Well, that is according to all those guys, so it's like in and of itself, even if it is a good sound, it's like just you hear it a lot and then it's not interesting by that virtue. So just the sonic aspects of stuff has to be a little different. I like plenty of extreme vocals, so I can't tell what the fuck they're saying, but I like it when I can tell which one of those I'm hearing when I hear it, like Martin Van Druren's a good example, or this guy doesn't even say words a lot of time.
Dude, I'm trying to get freaking Tardy on here, man.
Yeah. It's like, but so I like the personality and stuff, and I'm glad actually death metal, I think, with like the Blood Incantation release or the Necrot
you like Blood
release,
Incantation?
Yeah, I was listening to Slave Species of the Gods the other day. I was doing a bunch of night. It's very much the sound and aesthetic is like in that 90s death metal song, but that's not a song that was from 90s death metal. It's like It's the same aesthetic, but it's like if they were to teleport back to that, it's like they would be one of you could point out differences between them and the other ones too, in the arrangements and the vibe and everything. And
I think that album is, I think they're going to be like one of the best. I mean, they're one of the best death metal bands in the game right now, but like Obituary back in the day, like Blood Incantation is going to be that in like 10 years.
I hope so. I want to have new like legends and stuff in metal, because metal can't become that like remember when circle jerk sesh where like we have the same conversations that we were having 15 years ago about the same records. That's not the sign of a lively like flourishing genre, is it? I mean, whether it's Master Puppets for the 10 millionth time, or whether we're doing Altars of Madness or whatever, or any sub style, or Maiden or fucking Birds of Mayhem or whatever your flavor is, of classic records that everyone knows. That's like a problem with our culture in general, though. It's like not just metal. Look at the mainstream. It's like,
oh my God, dude!
Listen
to the radio.
If I hear like, or certain things like, you at this point, I feel like if you could clear a room with just a small town girl, I'm out the door. Like before you got to the end of that,
Dude, every day at work, I hear Foo Fighters and Nirvana, the same 3 songs every day. And I'm like,
it's like you're not even gonna get into like the Nirvana discog or anything.
No,
it's
no,
the same ones,
Come as you are.
Yeah, yeah. That sucks. Well, that's the way it is. That's it's so I think often like people who are super into metal, it's such a different way of going into music because it's like you get a little like, what exactly? How do you tell what the difference between progressive and technical death metal is? For example, so where's the line there? You have those conversations where you're like smoking a blunt with your metalhead friends or whatever. How you call things, how you understand this style of music you're listening to. But I just love that people basically that there's enough stuff there to geek out upon. There's enough actual content in the music that you could talk for fucking days about it, about what makes, for instance, what should death metal soloing sound like, to what extent is like pretty tonality acceptable, how atonal should you be, how like nonsense and how much structure is good, and there's the whole range of styles across it. People don't argue for real in arguments, they argue, so to speak, on what's the best by laying it down on record, and then the people decide.
Right. What is so off of that, have you ever got into any like heated conversations with people about metal ever in your whole life?
In order to write songs.
Oh,
all,
God,
like,
yeah.
all
Yeah.
the
Oh,
time.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
All the time. Like, it's necessary because why we should do this idea instead of that, or why the song should be this way, or why the drum fill should go like that, or why the lyric should be this instead of any number of things. Just like the whole concept of like, well, you just want to make badass riffs with cool beats and stuff. Well, what is that? Right. So but no, you can actually have that discussion. You can get into it. And there's like plenty of examples of sweet metal that you could spend your life still not learning, and that's just metal, let alone music in general. And I think metalheads would in general be fools not to like, even stuff you're not necessarily like super fond of. It's like, well, what are the people who are fond of this getting out of it? That's been one that I learned when I heard something I didn't like, instead of just straight that, to try to ask myself that. Now, granted, I'm at the point where if it's like coming in with like synth pads, the synth hi-hat, that auto-tune, I'm just out and I can't even understand it. And I'm just like, I don't want to live on this planet anymore. And so I can't even go into most public settings now. It's sad. But, it feels that way sometimes. I can't even do it without being bitter and cynical. And I'm like, this is like the musical version of processed plastic cheese.
It is. Dude, I was just talking about the fucking auto-tune culture and how like people that like that's all they do now. Like it's crazy.
It's a point of pride to us that we sound the fucking same in our live show, and there's like nothing fucking fake. Yeah, here's exactly what we do have going, straight up. So we have tracks that go to a click track with the drummer, and the tracks are the following: like "Woe to the Vanquished" intro. There's like a backwards fade in scream. I can't fade in real life, so we have like that. That's like about it. There's some keys, and if we were going to do like Gunfell Silent, there's some like we're not going to have a keyboard player on stage. There's like two or three things. There's like 2 or 3 things, and we have, for instance, the shell in Shellfire. We don't have an artillery piece on stage. If I could, I would do it.
Come on, Iron Maiden. Come on, let's get this.
Somebody, you guys just have to like buy a zillion more Warbringer records so I can do this shit,
Dude, I went to a Nickelback show and they had a beer cannon. Like, hear me out. Nickelback sucks, but back in the day, like a beer cannon, bro.
I mean, you could put that on any show and it would make. I mean, now it's whatever show it was plus a beer can. It's so even if it was a 1 on the 1 to 10, well, now it's a 2 or a 3 because beer's good.
Beer's always good, especially well, it's got to be. Gee, look at that cat! Look at that cat, man. What you drinking?
All right, a beer for the interview here. It's slightly below room temperature. It didn't get fridged, but good enough.
What you got?
It's Trader Joe's. I got I was at Trader Joe's today, so I got this Tierra Madre. It's some like Modelo kind of taste in Mexican style lager. It's pretty nice. I like this.
Nice. Are you a craft guy?
I mean, in that I like good tasting things, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not into like, I don't need to like have a discussion on every single fucking beer I drink, but like I'd like it to be good. Yes.
Right on. You're not like a strictly freaking blue ribbon guy.
No, I've been given enough, because the thing is, okay, so the band on tour has a rider, right? And unless you're playing like a really, a good snazzy show, which, often playing metal across the country, you go in the go-betweens on a Tuesday or whatever at some bar somewhere. And so that means like very often, whatever they're giving you, they're trying. We have actually what we call the fuck you meal, which is how to fulfill our rider as cheaply as possible. We recognize it. Okay, so it's the following. So you need you can either give the band a buyout, which is a certain amount of money per member in the band and crew for them to go eat, or you can go and provide food. If you provide food, the cheapest and laziest way to do it is you go to Little Caesars and you buy like 6 to 8 hot and ready pizzas. Okay, that there you've just fed like 6, 7 guys or whatever, and an element in the contract that you should be dropping like $100 or $150 or something, and you've done it for like 20. So for the promoter, that's great. So we call that the fuck you meal.
That's good.
Yeah, and then that plus PBR is like, that's how you can fulfill what's on the contract as like it is fulfilled. That is a meal and that is beer for like. So
right.
We notice it. But because of that, I've had more PBR than like any and all other beers ever. I don't really drink on tour anymore. I still like to drink at home, but not as like an occupation or anything.
Right. Chris actually said that to me. I was like, "So what do you do outside of X, Y, and Z?" He's like, "Well, I can't count beer as a job," so I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, here's a freaking topic. Being 2004, I read.
Okay.
What are 3 qualities you think a musical project needs to have to be around more than like 5 years?
I think, well, I can only speak for I've only been in one. So, in our case, I think the stuff, tenacity. I'll name that first, because by all rights, we should have died a few times. Here's some of them. So 2008 War Without End tour, Ryan Bates, the drummer on the first record, leaves after 2 tours. We had, or it may have been 3, but basically the record comes out in February. By June, he's out. We have fucking open air, our first appearance as the first show on our next European show. Huge. Well, right, it was. So it was the biggest show we had ever played in our career to that point. And it was still about as big as anything we've done. It doesn't get much bigger, right? So, yeah. So anyways, we lose our drummer like 3 weeks before that or so.
Wow.
Month tops. And we get Nick Ritter, who's like this guy. He's like 5-6 years older than the rest of us. We were all pretty young then. And he was in his like late 20s. We were all early 20s, late teens. And he kind of rolls in and shreds on drums. And he's all into like Meshuggah, Dillinger's Gate Plan. Like the more polyrhythms, the better, crazy, just the craziest drum ninja stuff that he can find. Thomas Lang, Bosio, the rest. And he plays with us, who are pretty much like, we were in a garage 6 months before that, And so it really kind of leveled up the band. I think it changed us from kind of some of the other thrash bands, just because this guy was a really different type of player, and we had to adapt to him on the fly, and we didn't really have time to ask questions. He was the only motherfucker we knew or found who could actually play the stuff and learn it in 3 weeks. So there's a Vakken Total War video you can find. It was down there. It got uploaded, where it's like very young us doing our first show with Nick Ritter in Europe and Vakken. And yeah, so that, and Waiting in the Nightmares later that year we wrote in 2 months. But that, like, for instance, we could have fucking screwed the pooch on that one somehow. That not a given that we pull that off, you know. We had many things like that where we used to have like a tour schedule with like a week in between, and we'd like lose a person sometimes and have to fill it in.
Wow,
make it happen.
That's
We had
crazy.
to do all kinds of shit like that. And then after Empire's collapse, the whole fucking lineup left, except me and Adam. And so we didn't do shit for like a year after that. And then we started meeting and we rebuilt the whole band. It's not a given that would happen. It's not a given we would have gotten a record deal. And it's not a given that we would have been able to make anything in the kind of 2.0 version that anybody cares about. So it's all those challenges. I was well aware of it. It really lit a fire under my ass, I guess. But yeah, so tenacity, it's sort of the refusal to let it die, I guess, regardless of anything else. And you know, I feel like, well, I've been kind of soldiering on forever. Like, you know, maybe if I just like found a gimmick where we write all our songs about blank and we dress like blank, we would probably do a lot better because the dumbest guy in the room can get that. But I'm not writing for that guy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be a fucking gimmick band. There's so many. There's so many out there.
Fuck costumes and keyboards, man. Fuck that. That's not what metal's about. Songwriting and riffs, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do something that's in the tradition of Iomi onwards. You know, that's cut from that cloth, where the riff comes first, and it's like evil, monolithic, but it's about stuff. It has ideas, and it's unbound by this kind of idea that you got to do what the people want to hear, what's gonna sell. Fuck that. You can do Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner or whatever bullshit, or you can invent this thing, the blast beat, that people are like, is that even music or whatever, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just saw a video today on YouTube of this House of Mask. I don't know if you know him, but yeah, anyway, he's got a YouTube channel. He did a review of another gimmick band, and they straight up ripped like Korn, and he just ripped into him. Like, he's like, bro, this is legit Korn. Why are you dressing up, you know, making a gimmick and trying to sell your freaking image and everything, like just to copy someone else? Like,
so I could give you the surface level. I could go on a little bit of a rant about
you can
that.
Go on a rant, dude.
Okay, you ever heard of a concept / book called Capitalist Realism?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's by this.
Let me write it down.
It's fucked up and kind of, it's like hopelessly, you know, get ready to read a lot of words that end with the word ism, as you might have guessed. But it's kind of fucked up, this fucked up concept by this guy called Mark Fisher, who was like a alt-RC music journalist who wrote academic stuff about modern society and culture, and then like offed himself. And he wrote this book is one of the most depressing things you could possibly read. It's basically saying that because you know, you and me, we have known every country in the world is basically running some version of neoliberal capitalism right now, which means basically your value is what you can bring to the market. So, you know, in the world we're in, it's not, is Jeff Bezos in fact, you know, 80 million times more valuable than you? Is his life actually worth that much more? No, it actually is. That's what our society says. That's what the wealth says.
Yeah,
you know, that's what that means.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's in fact what is. And that's why, and this guy in this book, Capitalist Realism, he ties this feeling of like, we've lived in this so long that we can't even imagine anything else. That like, oh yeah, you are a genius if you're good at marketing, because, well, there you are, you made a lot of money, so the market decided you're great. You know,
yeah.
And you know, the guy who wrote the song with like the least notes in it is, you know, yay, everyone bought it, you know.
Here's the cash, man. Here's the cash. You want it.
Right. And in fact, what this guy's like, you know, in fact, that is in the framework we're in. That is the best thing. And what he's saying sort of is that, like, music kind of is in this endless repetition because culture hasn't changed either. Music and art changes when culture does, and ours really hasn't too much. We're
Right.
just kind of in a later version of we're basically a later version of Reagan's America, more or less, with some social progress.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like a straight up solid quote that people don't really say most often.
So that's why the remake of the sequel of the remember when someone made something back when history was actually, when like art and culture was actually progressing. Yeah, remember that? We're going to give a call back to that because there's nothing but bleakness now.
Oh boy. Damn.
Nothing, a sea of plastic. Yeah. Here we'll dredge up some stuff from the time before, and then we'll wrap it in this bubble paste and we'll sell it to you. And remember here,
marketing.
Get ready for the fifth Spider-Man prequel, because remember, your dad liked Spider-Man when he was a kid, because that shit's been around this long now, and so it's an easy sell to the next generation. It's smart. It works.
It's literally like the iPhone and the PlayStation and all that crap. It's literally the same thing.
Planned obsolescence, dude. It's smart. People say it's immoral, but hey, under the current social logic, it's smart. It works. You have to get a different social, like if you reward ruthless profit first and foremost, you get this fucking inhuman world. And here's a thought. Circling back, I think the reason people like me, when they were teenagers, made thrash metal from the 80s instead of anything modern of our own time is because it's like reaching back to sort of like the before time when real shit existed.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's like, by the way, none of the stuff, let's list the common themes of 80s thrash metal. You're mad about, say, like, sort of a sense of lack of freedom, anger and alienation, society, frustration, suicide, I'll fade to black or something, rage and anger in general. That's kind of a big one. Anti-evangelical / satanic stuff. That's the one that's kind of a little less relevant. But then the other ones, corporate greed, destruction of the human environment, warfare. Those three kind of haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah. Those ones aren't leaving anytime soon. I lost your hearing. I can't hear you. There you
Sorry,
are.
that's the chord thing. Actually, I might argue that the fact that you and any other person I might talk to says that immediately, like it's a reflex.
You think?
Oh, yeah, I think. Basically, if I ever say, like, this stuff's not changing, it's like, well, once upon a time, slavery is a basic fact of every world society. So Carl Sagan in this thing, who speaks for it, the guy I have a lot of respect for, he's like, he points to that, and he also points to how, like, hey, women have a lot more individual rights now. That's a pretty serious fucking change in society.
Dude, I've noticed that within the last couple of years, like big.
Oh, it's been a major push since like the mid 20th century. So it's just a continuation of.
Well, it's just like in the
history.
workforce in general. Like they make a point, like you fuck with women, like you're in deep shit, like you're fired.
Rightly so. There shouldn't be, rightly so. Anyways, point being, Carl Sagan says these two things are fundamental changes. So don't tell me we can't do any better than what we're seeing. If we can't do any better than this, fuck.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah. So I kind of am going to try to put all that shit I've just been talking to into thrash. And I think since I've kind of hammered World War I, like, the tragic kind of those themes a lot on the last two records, I think that I'm going to kind of move toward like modern dystopian themes, trying to talk about like, the sort of like image of like a person who has no future in anything, so they show up at their job and then they go home and kill the pain with opioids.
Oh, you're gonna do more like realism stuff, like
the historical stuff is realism too, FYI.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically very like a lot of present focused stuff, and kind of so in extreme metal, there's this quest to kind of be the most brutal. You're into the extreme shit, You probably had the
everybody wants to be heavier.
Well, right, and so in death metal in particular, there is that quest for who can write the most like lyrics that sound the most, like they came straight out of Jeffrey Dahmer's brain or something, right?
Right.
And I always say, there's a common thing you'll hear me quote, well, what's more brutal, Jeff Dahmer or Joe Stalin? You know, Joe Stalin never had to get his hands dirty with a knife. I mean, it was Koba or something as a younger man, but you know, it's like, but by his will, you can just kind of enslave 180 million people. That's Jeff Dahmer doesn't have his shit together enough to do that. You need institutional, organized power for that. You need to be smart.
Yeah, dude, the newest like music videos you guys released when your guitar player was like, it was like some type of like trade, and I was like, this is straight up, like this legit looks like they're like fucking president of the United States. Like, this is amazing.
President of Australia.
I can't hear you again. I don't know what the hell.
It's because this little.
No, you're good. I can't. I think it popped off one more time. I can't hear you. There we go.
Hello.
There we go.
Sorry about that. It's just I get animated and I unplug shit.
That's all right.
As a big clumsy person,
so
I couldn't do any genre where I actually had to dance. Headbanging and stomping suits me.
I'm gonna have to check out that freaking book. So another thing.
It's like 80 pages. It's okay. Do you want to hear? Starting about. Oddly enough, it starts out talking about Kurt Cobain, who you brought up earlier. Here's what Mark Fisher has to say about Kurt Cobain, paraphrased, of course. Basically, he's like, so there's this guy Kurt Cobain, and he made this music back in his garage in Seattle that was inspired by shit like the Pixies and whatever. That was kind of this, like, you know, in this sort of like downtrodden alienation with angsty anger in the you know, soft verse, fast chorus with angsty anger feelings. And this actually resonated with a shitload of people who are living in this same social system that he was, that produced those feelings. That's what Mark Fisher says. Therefore, he becomes really popular. So he says something to the effect of capitalism's infinitely plastic and it can market and sell anything, including anti-capitalism. So, you know, Kurt Cobain's whole thing is like, you know, don't commodify me, as he goes on to be the #1 selling commodity in the music business.
Yeah.
And then, you know, now his whole existence is a contradiction. He tries to do like In Utero, where he's going like rape me and trying to not be commodified. And even that is like, wow, the hot new commodity artist is challenging norms. And that's a news piece, you know, that you can now sell. And then he blows his fucking head off, you know, and then that's a new, you know, buy the Kurt Cobain, voice of a generation, buy the t-shirt at Target. That's commodified too. It's like the Borg fucking ate, like the profit motive, if it was a forest, is like the Borg that ate him and his art.
Now here's the question off of that.
That's kind of the guy's point, though, is that if you can actually and I think, quite frankly, that's why metal, punk, and rap have struggled to remain legitimate art forces like they were, because basically you're like, change, some things are bad, I'm mad about it. And then, like, nothing happens and your stuff sells and you can pack arenas, whatever, and it's the same fucking shit, but worse next year, you know?
Exactly.
So it kind of makes your words fall flat. And don't even get me started on how flat, like, a song like Imagine feels to me right now with this cynical ass perspective that I have.